Hey, good Friday evening. It's Chief Meteorologist Brad Penovich here at WCNC for Live Weather Impact. We're talking about some gorgeous weather. It's a weekend, feels like a Friday, and boy, the weather could not be more perfect. I mean, I jokingly call sometimes this weather Chamber of Commerce weather. This really is pretty close to Chamber of Commerce weather. I know some folks want that fall weather, maybe a little bit cooler, but this is about as normal as it gets around here, and we'll talk a little bit about that here in a second. But let's take a look outside from our camera looking back towards Uptown, because this is kind of the view we've had all day, and it's been spectacular. I mean, the skyline looks great. The blue skies look great. We've had plenty of those fair weather cumulus clouds, which we'll talk about clouds more in a second, because today is kind of a cool day for cloud lovers out there. The weekend, warm and dry. I'm not going to call it hot because we'll probably end up being exactly near normal. Rain. I'm going to talk a lot about this with Tim, because we talked about this in the last couple of shows, that the chance of maybe an isolated rain chance, I'm not convinced it's 100% there, but we'll talk about that. And certainly looks warmer as we get later in the week. Those fair weather clouds on that northeast flow, these are these puffy cumulus clouds. They will go away with the loss of heating of the day, because these are really, every one of those clouds is basically a thermal. It's where the ground heated up and rose up and got up there to the cooler parts of the atmosphere and formed a cloud. Once we lose the heating of the day, which tonight, as I check my sunset, 7:35 p.m. is sunset tonight. We are getting close to our first 7:30 sunset in quite some time. So it's getting dark now, right around time high school football starts tonight. So if you haven't left, or you're watching me from your phone or your device, hope you brought a long sleeve shirt, because at the very minimum, once the sun goes down, it does get crisp and cool out there. Temperature right now, 82. Actually, one of the warmer spots in the area. Most areas are hovering right around 80 degrees, but it's incredibly dry. So those high school games out there, the high school football forecast, I expect temperatures will be in the 70s most of the game, possibly upper 60s by the second half. So certainly, I would definitely want a jacket out there as temperatures fall back into the upper 50s. It's kind of that reverse heat index feel. It's not necessarily a wind chill. It's because it's so dry, your body can cool itself super efficiently, so it feels cooler than the air temperature. Typically, we're talking about the opposite. It's the heat index where it's hotter than the actual air temperature. Tomorrow, same story, low 80s, but northeast winds, dry air. Feel super comfortable out there. Tomorrow, big match in Uptown. I'm actually super excited about it. This is one of the big things going on this weekend. Charlotte FC is taking on Miami, and everybody knows Messi plays for Miami. That would be a huge draw in and of itself, but Charlotte FC has won 8 matches in a row. If they win tomorrow, that's 9 matches in a row. That ties the MLS record for consecutive wins by a team. We are in 3rd place in the Eastern Conference, folks. This game, if they win, locks in home field advantage for a 3-game playoff series. So huge. And I'm already hearing it's sold out. They only sold the lower bowl, so good luck finding a ticket for that. And the other nice thing about this is typically I talk about sitting in the sun in these games. With a 7:30 start and a 7:30 sunset, no sun issues in this game. Everybody will be in the shade the entire game. So certainly spectacular weather in Uptown tomorrow. Let's look back, because what's really cool, we had a really cool thing happen. We almost had the exact same high and low temperature yesterday that we had today. Yesterday was 84 and 59. Today it was 84 and 60. We missed it by 1 degree. That's one of those statistical anomalies I love, when you just almost have identical temperatures 2 days in a row. High pressure, a lot of blue H's on the map, and that's all we're going to see. Tons of high pressure over us, meaning we are going to see dry conditions all weekend long. But see that low pressure system on the coast? That is what we're watching for some rain, possibly as soon as Monday, but I think more likely Tuesday into Wednesday. And let's just look at the rain potential here. This weekend, zilch, zero, nada. But starting Monday, notice the rain trying to creep in from the coast there a little bit by the afternoon. So I joked on Facebook, this is a good weekend if you have a honey-do list. But honestly, if you have to do painting or laying pavement, concrete, roofing, anything where you need a really long area of dry weather, this is the weekend to do it, because you could keep it dry the entire time. And speaking of dry, dew points stay very dry throughout this entire period. 20% chance of rain right now, Tuesday, Wednesday, but that is subject to change, and we'll talk about that uncertainty in the rain chances. Tropics, obviously you guys know we're in the peak of the season. Been pretty quiet. We had a lull like this last year. We're in a lull right now. 40% chance of that tropical wave developing, though, in the next 7 days. And that means it won't be to the middle of the Atlantic for at least 7 days. So this is not an immediate threat. No worries right now, but don't let your guard down. That is the one word of caution I would give everybody out there. We are heading towards the most active time of the season, late September and all of October. And last year, this is about the time the season really started to ramp up. So let's talk about this low pressure system. Why is there uncertainty? Well, because it's not really clear that this low is going to move inland. In fact, there's some indication it might stay along the coast. But if it does, you could see it trying to spread rain in there by Tuesday. And again, it looks pretty scattered right now. I'm not super confident we're going to see a ton of it, but we'll keep an eye on it just the same. But certainly by next weekend, we could see a pattern change. And the long-range rainfall forecast shows minimal rain, 1/4 inch or less. So that looks pretty scant, if anything. But it's subject to error, and we'll talk about that with Tim coming up. But the weekend, this is a work of art. I mean, I could have recorded the weekend weather, James, and just taken the rest of the weekend off. That's how nice this is, especially when the high and low are exactly the same 2 days in a row. Tomorrow could be another day like that. 60 in the morning, maybe 83 again, 84. Sunday, a little bit warmer, mid-80s. And as we take a look at your Jerry Hunt Supercenter 7-day, that's a mouthful I get to say all the time now, mid-80s Sunday into Monday, low 80s Tuesday, Wednesday. Those are the question mark days. So if there's going to be something that's going to change right there, everybody pay attention. This could go up in rain chances to 40-50%. We'll go 10 days into the future just to show you that it does get toasty by the end of next week. I expect temperatures back in the upper 80s, maybe close to 90 by Thursday and Friday. We didn't hit 90 last weekend. We got close. 89 twice. We could be close again Thursday, Friday. And just remember, we have not hit 90 degrees since August 17th. So it has been a long stretch there. Also notice if we don't see those rain chances go up Tuesday, Wednesday, could be a while before we see significant rain chances, because even next weekend, it's 20% right now, but trust me, that long out, uncertainty super high. So when you see low rain chances in the long range, I wouldn't read too much in that, even as much as I would read into high chances. So stay tuned for some updates. We'll be back after the break in 2 minutes. We'll talk to Tim about this low pressure system. We'll talk about why today is a big day for meteorologists. All right, welcome back. It's a Friday, September 12th. Tim Buckley joins me from WFMY. Tim, how's your end of the week and Friday going?
You know, I was just making some jokes on the news here about we have to show up every day. Sometimes we have so much to talk about.
Yeah.
And some days we've got high pressure. And it feels like we've had high pressure for about a month, Brad. I know that's not the way it's actually been, but we've had a quiet stretch of weather, haven't we? Have you had trouble kind of stringing together a storyline a little bit?
I have, and I almost wanted to send a note to my producers, like, I don't need any more teases or up weathers. There's nothing to talk about. It's like, because, Tim, I don't know if you heard in my forecast, but we almost, I'm not kidding you, we had almost the identical high and low yesterday to today. We missed the low by 1, but we had 84 and 59 yesterday and 84 and 60 today. So pretty rare to have almost the exact same high and low temperature 2 days in a row.
Yeah, that's literally a copy-paste. I kind of have that for us forecasted for tomorrow.
Yeah.
You know, today we are 81. I have 81 for tomorrow. We'll see what happens. But, yeah, it's basically been very similar and not a lot of variety until maybe we get that disturbance next week with some rainfall. That'll be the main interest, I guess.
Yeah, and I think that is going to be the big thing we talk about. I see you have your daylight tracker brought up. I actually mentioned this in my forecast too. We're getting really close to a 7:30 sunset here in Charlotte. Today was 7:35, but that's kind of a, it's like once we have that first post or early 8 o'clock sunset and then we get to the 7:30, it really is a sign of the times, Tim, when we start to see these earlier sunsets. Because a game like today, they think we have high school football tonight, and we have soccer in Uptown. Some of these games are starting right now, and those are starting closer to sunset now.
Yeah, it's, that we talk about football so much this time of year. There are different looks to football season. You have the really early season look when all the trees are green. And I remember week 1 football a couple weeks ago here for high school on the 11 o'clock news, the highlights, everything was so bright because you even have sunset basically around halftime or later at that point. But like you said, we only have about 3 more weeks in Greensboro and probably for Charlotte too. About 3 or so more weeks of 7 o'clock sunsets. So it goes fast this time of year. Like it or not, there's no fighting it. That's just the way it is. And this has nothing to do with the time change that people talk about. This is just the natural way that it is when you have a tilted planet orbiting around the sun.
Yeah, we're not losing or gaining, those hours or daylight because of that time change. We're just shifting when the daylight happens when we do that, which always kind of throws people for a loop. I know you've talked a lot about this, kind of flagged it earlier in the week, actually, and we're still kind of watching this low pressure system on the coast, Tim, and I've been going back and forth. Like, it looks like maybe we'll see rain, and it seems like every other model run, it looks more promising for rain, and then doesn't look very promising. It's going to be interesting to watch next week, and I think that the concern is, and I think this is why the guidance is struggling with this, is there's really no major steering current right now. Everything's just kind of meandering, and when you have low pressure systems like this, almost like a cutoff low, it's kind of hard to say where it's going to go or drift. But the European model, and full transparency, this is just one model. Like you've been showing, it's showing some moisture trying to back into the Carolinas, maybe as soon as late Monday, but really Tuesday, Wednesday. And I've gone back and forth here with rain chances between 20 and 40%, but also have been telling people, hey, there's a lot of uncertainty. It could end up being nothing, or we could end up with soggy, cloudy, drizzly conditions.
And we really could use the rain. So, especially in the middle of the week, nice time to have it. It would be nice to get it. You hate to get people's hopes up if they're banking on that or hoping for it, because, you might be doing lawn treatments. You need this kind of stuff. This is not a sure thing. It really isn't. A lot of models do keep us pretty dry, but if you kind of compare some of the ensembles, it still seems like the Euro is leading the way with this. Even the AI version of it doesn't quite agree quite as much as the main parent model does. So I think at least some scattered showers are a possibility. We even saw that to a very low degree in eastern North Carolina earlier this week. They had some scattered rain with this northeast flow that we've been seeing. So at this point, there's enough smoke that I'd bet we'd have at least some rainfall across our area. But it's hard to say if it'll be minor. If it plays out in the right way, though, Brad, you could have some areas that get a couple inches if they set up perfectly over a couple of days. That's what it would take.
Yeah, and one of the things I noticed today, at least looking at our internal modeling, which is a short-range model that we use called the graph, it's actually come a long way, but it's actually even as early as late Monday starting to show that low kind of drifting west, and at least some showers making it to central North Carolina by Monday evening at the earliest. So that's another sign that the short-range guidance is starting to pick up on that same low drifting back. You also mentioned, you brought up a good point, there's a high pressure to the north, which kind of aids in that onshore flow there. And there's a great graphic that you have kind of showing that it's just not the low pressure by itself. The high to the north could be a big player in this, driving it in. What I find fascinating, Tim, is that the air mass is still relatively dry at the surface, so this could be almost like a in situ wedge, kind of hybrid wedge setup where the rain falls into dry air and it actually causes low clouds, drizzle, and maybe enhances the rain a little bit.
This would be a forecaster's alarm bell going off to say, ignore the model guidance, ignore the high temperature MOS data.
Yes.
Because I know that's Japanese to some people. It's not real common English here, but
yeah.
we're of course talking about if you're going to have rain and you're going to have it be cloudy out there, it's probably not going to get up into the upper 70s, for example.
No,
so
yeah, we
could have a situation where you might have some upper 60s.
Yeah, that's what I was thinking. Yeah,
and remember, we had that in August.
Yeah, and so there's been some precedent for this. We've seen this pattern a couple times, even in late summer. So this is not a crazy thing to think about. You brought up a good point about the lawn treatments. We're getting into the time of year if you're a homeowner. This may seem like something you do every year for folks that don't own homes and have to deal with lawns. This is aeration and overseeding season. And for folks that aren't familiar with this is when you punch the holes in the lawn, you throw down some seed, some lime, and some seed, and it kind of sets the stage for next year for a great lawn. And you typically want it to be a little wet, but you don't want it to be too wet. It's always a fine line. You don't want the seed and stuff to wash away, but you need it to be cool and wet so that stuff takes off. And for me personally, mid-September is kind of my time frame for doing that, Tim. And if this happened, this would be perfect.
It would be really nice. I can tell you, I cut the grass today. It's not wet right now.
No.
For me in Greensboro, this is the driest that our ground and our grass. This is the driest that it's been in months that I can remember, because we've really been pretty removed from that wet weather stretch now for several weeks. We got a couple storms Thursday, Saturday, a couple weekends ago, but it's been a while. So the dryness is winning currently, and we'll kind of just have to see if that's able to change, and that'll depend a lot on the tropics over the next couple of weeks.
Yeah, so let's talk about this overall pattern, because we kind of joked at the beginning, we're kind of stuck in a rut. We've had paste and copy and paste kind of forecasts. When do you think this pattern is going to change? I think for any direction, hotter, cooler, and also the tropics kind of heating up. I mean, these are all things that are just kind of stagnant right now. There's just nothing really happening in the atmosphere, and at some point, something's got to give.
Yeah, and we were chatting earlier in the week. I know we were mentioning this with Brittany on the show, but it's almost it's not quite an omega block per se, but there is some blocking going on in the atmosphere. And when we talk about blocking, what that would mean is basically, typically you have systems moving along, the jet stream pushing along weather systems. There's not much of that happening. One thing that kind of caught my eye today, Brad, is you see how hot it's been in like the middle of the country right now?
Yes.
So they're blocked up with this big heat.
Yeah.
And usually when we think about blocking, or when I notice about it, or when I talk about it most on the news, is blocking in a bad way. So maybe you get blocked with like, oh man, it's still cloudy and drizzly, or oh boy, it's, can you believe how cold it is? We've just been blocked with comfortable weather up and down the East Coast for a long time. The middle of the country right now, they're getting blocked up with big time 90s. I mean, it is toasty. It's set 96 right now in Kansas City. I think they had their hottest day of the year, either yesterday or today. Just amazing to see how hot it's been out that way. But that's partly to do with this blocked weather pattern right now, where things are kind of, just kind of sitting in place, and it can really cook you, or in our case, it's just, the comfort continues.
Yeah, I mean, I noticed that too. And when I was leaving Huntsville, I was with a lot of meteorologists that were heading back to the middle of the country. And that's all they were talking about was how hot it was going to be, and maybe the hottest they'd seen in a month and a half, because this is like midsummer heat showing up here in September. And kind of thankful we're on the east side of that. But yeah, it's I don't know, James, you can take my graphics here for a second, but to kind of reiterate what you said, that omega block, if you guys look carefully, this is the upper level jet stream pattern. If you look carefully in the middle of the country, the configuration of the ridge trough takes on the shape of the Greek letter omega. And when you see that happen, as Tim mentioned, you just don't see much movement on either side. So you get trapped in that heat in the middle. And on the West Coast, you get a trough, and they're going to see some cooler weather. On the East Coast, you get trapped in a trough. And that's why that low pressure off the coast could back up a little bit, because there's nothing pushing it east. It would be pulled back to the west. So, yeah, kind of an interesting pattern. And, the heat's building in the middle of the country. And actually could see some rapid onset drought in parts of the Mid-South as well because of this, because it's not raining anywhere. So definitely an interesting pattern. But sometimes you see this happen in the transition seasons, Tim. I know this happens sometimes in the late spring and early fall, because the jet stream's trying to come south, but the days are getting shorter. And so you kind of get stuck in these patterns as we're kind of stuck between two seasons. And it usually takes a larger sometimes a recurving typhoon in the western Pacific or a hurricane in the Atlantic to start changing up the pattern a little bit. Those big storms in other parts of the world can flip this pattern for us eventually.
Yeah, they can, and it'll be interesting to see, what changes it, because right now we don't really see a big end in sight necessarily. I think next week will be interesting with the low pressure, like we talked about, but maybe it will be one of those bigger global factors that you mentioned. Otherwise, kind of keep enjoying things, I guess. We'll see about the rainfall, and then we'll see what that tropical system wants to do in the middle of the ocean. I'm not too concerned about it. I don't know about you, but it doesn't seem like there would be much to push it our way. I know that's light years away right now, but if Gabrielle forms, I don't think it's going to be a concern for us at this point.
Yeah, that may just be the one that kind of opens up the floodgates for more tropical waves to come out and get more active. Tim, we did have a viewer question from John, and I think James, what is that question he has for us? He wanted to ask us about the pattern as well, right?
He did. Yeah, John watches our show, I think, religiously every night, so thank you, John. Wants to know when we're going to get out of this pattern, maybe back to more fall-like 70-ish temperatures. What do you think, Brad?
Not in the next 7 to 10 days. I think, if anything, we're going to have to go through that ridge first to the west, and we might see some heat build our way the end of next week. But I think we're probably a week removed from any significant pattern change. Don't you think, Tim? We've got a ways to go before this really changes dramatically.
Well, for the temperatures, probably the wild card is how much cloud cover and rain would you have coming up on Tuesday, Wednesday. But absent that, I actually think it looks like quite a bit warmer toward the end of next week, once you get in like Thursday, Friday, Saturday time frame. I'm going to pop up my graphics here, so James, it'll be a little adjustment for you as we're producing this. But there you go, my beautiful desktop browser.
Yes.
We call this 51 computer ensembles all at once. And you say, well, what's that?
Zoom this in.
We'll explain it to you.
Yeah, it looks really warm.
Zoom is great. Perfect.
Yeah.
So this is for Greensboro. You don't need to be looking at anything in particular. Just kind of, look at it all at once. You can see the warmer colors, they look hot. The cooler colors, those are the cooler temperatures, day and night. So you have daytimes here. The next couple of days, we have some mid-80s showing up. Then it's showing you that wet weather pattern right about here. Then here's the end of next week, where there's potential. It could actually be a couple of toasty days, right?
Yeah.
But it looks after that and this is, we're getting into the 22nd, the 23rd, the 24th. The model doesn't know what to do with that time frame just yet.
Yeah.
Some of the members have heat. Others have some really cool, comfy 70s like you would like, John. So there's not a strong signal really either way in the second week, which is to say, keep on watching and check back. Because right now you probably would just forecast climatology, which at this time of year is around 80 degrees.
Yeah, that's the guidance kind of telling us, I don't know. There's a big question mark there. Tim, before we got about 4 minutes here. Today is an interesting day. It is Cloud Appreciation Day from the National, I think it's the World Cloud Appreciation Society.
Yes.
Which I thought was pretty cool, because they're actually responsible for naming clouds. And every once in a while, you'll get a random new cloud. Like, I think it was it's been a while. the asperatus undulatus clouds was was one of the new ones. And
you guys are just making up words.
Well, it does. It sounds really cool, and I'm going to show you a great picture in a minute. But Tim, I wanted to show everybody. NOAA has a great PDF. You can actually grab this from the NOAA site. It's a cloud chart. And I don't know about you, but as a young meteorologist, I had the field guide for clouds. And this is one of my favorite things to do as a young Brad growing up in Northeast Ohio, was identifying all the different clouds. And it's pretty cool. It's got all the layers you can see on the chart, shows you what height they're at, because clouds are usually classified by their altitude, and what type of clouds. You've got stratiform, you got cumulus, you got cirrus, and then you've got all the layering. So there's all these various clouds. So let me ask you, what is your favorite type of cloud?
Gosh, this is such a hard question. Like you, I like clouds. Like you, I grew up in the clouds, up in the Great Lakes area. There are a lot of clouds up there, mostly stratiform. I'm a big fan of your mackerel sky kind of situation. I think an altocumulus, that's a really nice, fair weather type of cloud. And of course, your typical summertime thunderhead cumulonimbus. When you start to get into storm season and you see those bubbling up, I love one of those. What about you?
Yeah, I was going to say cumulonimbus, just for whatever reason, always one of my favorite. But the other one that I loved, and I'm lucky we've got to see a couple times here in western North Carolina. It's not very common. It's lenticular, right? The clouds that form on high mountaintops. And when you see that, it gets that name because it looks like a lens. Sometimes it looks like a flying saucer, if you really. And they're usually in the Rockies, right, Tim, or the Sierras or the Cascades. But we've actually had them a couple times here over Mount Mitchell and Grandfather Mountain. It always throws me for a loop when you see those. But one of my other favorite ones, and I mentioned it earlier, so I'm gonna show you, is the undulatus asperatus cloud. And this was a picture, one of my all-time favorite pictures in post that I've ever done. Kathy Anderson, I'm going to give her a huge shout out. She's a photographer from the Morganton area. She caught them over fall color in the Linville Gorge back in 2016. Look at that picture. That actually made the Washington Post and a couple other big publications, because how often do you get to see a rare cloud over our spectacular mountains in the fall? That is just that. So that's an undulatus asperatus cloud for people who don't know what it is. And then look at that. That's the Linville Gorge, which was one of my favorite locations in North Carolina.
Yeah, and those are created partially due to the up and down movement, kind of a wave cloud like we would call it. And you can see it. That's what it looks like. And a lot of people see this, they say, that doesn't look real. And I don't blame you for being skeptical nowadays, but this is a real kind of cloud. And as a photography tip, if you go up on your leaf trip this fall, don't be bummed up if it's cloudy, because you can get better lighting for the leaf color when it's cloudy.
Yeah, absolutely. Great tip, by the way. That is a very good tip for photography up there. Sometimes sun drowns them out. Thanks for joining us. Have a great weekend, everybody. We'll see you on Monday.